Okay, we will go ahead and get started and let folks trickle in. Just so everyone is aware, this will be recorded and we will share the slides with you as well, just for your awareness. So good morning, everyone. Today we are going to be doing our Healthy Communities Grant webinar with the USDA, and we're actually really fortunate. In March of this year, we had Deputy Secretary Torres Small come visit the district and talk about food insecurity issues. And so a lot of the folks on the call today were actually at that visit. Some of them were able to participate in our roundtable and ask questions. And of course, what we've realized in working with a lot of our community partners is a lot of folks are looking for funding. And we are really fortunate in our office to create a capacity to have a grants coordinator. And that is Tamika Taylor, who is currently out on maternity leave. And so we are very fortunate to have her in that capacity. And we are very fortunate to have our federal agency partners willing to work with us and share their expertise and knowledge regarding these grants. And so I'll go ahead and let our two panelists introduce themselves if they'd like to real quickly.
Go
Cheryl,
ahead,
go ahead.
Sean. Oh, thank you. We're trying
Look
to
how
be very.
polite we are. Yeah. Go ahead,
Good
please.
morning. Good morning. My name is Cheryl Rice. I work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Like Richie said, I work for the portion of it that's called the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And our main goal is to help producers put together a really healthy food operation and add in conservation.
Thank you.
And I'm Sean Potts. I work for the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production. It's USDA's, I think I can still say this, it's USDA's newest office. We're also housed under the Natural Resources Conservation Service, but we're a departmental resource and try to be a public resource too for all things urban agriculture and innovative. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Cheryl and Sean, for being with us today and sharing your expertise. So we're going to start off with the video. Hopefully folks will be able to hear this. We have checked a few times.
Hi, I'm Congresswoman Amelia Sykes, and I proudly represent Ohio's 13th Congressional District. I'd like to say thank you to everyone for joining us today for this grants workshop. During today's event, you will hear directly from experts about federal grant opportunities available for you and others in our community. From day one, I've made it my top priority to reconnect our communities to Congress. And one of the best ways to do that is by bringing federal dollars and your taxpayer dollars back to our district for projects and initiatives that will improve the lives of people throughout Ohio's 13th district. I know federal grants can feel complex, and the process of researching and applying for grants can be difficult and overwhelming. That's why I'm committed to making sure that my constituents have the resources and support they need as they undertake this very important work. My office is here to help you throughout the entire grant application process. We can help write letters of support to accompany your federal grant request. We can connect you with a federal grant congressional liaison to answer any questions that are not answered in the notice of funding opportunity. We can provide feedback about how to make your application stronger and work with our colleagues in the federal agencies to research if there is a federal grant that would fund your proposed project or grant. Again, my office is here to help. So please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any additional questions following today's summit. Please enjoy.
All right, and for our panelists, I will operate our slides. So just let me know when I need to move about.
Sounds good. I think that's probably my cue. Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. Again, my name's Sean Potts. I'm with the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production, and I manage the Composting and Food Waste Reduction Cooperative Agreement Program, which we'll be talking about in a bit. Also very, very happy to be here because I am a native of Cuyahoga Falls. This is currently live in DC, miss home very much, but definitely really want folks in Northeast Ohio to take advantage of these great programs. So Rich, you can go to the next slide. So a little bit about our office. We were stood up in the 2018 Farm Bill. We just got fully stabbed in 2021. So, like I said, I think we still are USDA's newest office, and our mission essentially is to uh, kind of synergize things within the food system, especially as it gears towards urban agriculture, community-based agriculture, and innovative production. So you can see a few examples of what our office does here. So we support community gardens and farms, especially through our People's Garden initiative. We work with producers to help foster rooftop farming, vertical production, and green walls. All your ponics, hydroponic, aeroponic, and aquaponics, indoor farm greenhouses, and then to round out the food system, food waste reduction and composting production. So all of those things really serve as spaces where USDA is kind of just entering these kind of new technologies, as well as community-based agriculture, which has been going on for quite some time. I think when most people think of USDA, they think of, combines harvesting corn and everything. Our office is seeking to be the bridge to spaces where USDA has not had much of a presence in the past, but where great agriculture and community-based endeavors are happening. Next slide. Just a few more responsibilities of our office. We have our 2 flagship grant programs, which we'll talk about in just a minute. That's the Composting and Food Waste Reduction Program, known as CFWR, and our Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production Grants Program, called UAIP. In addition to that, we also work with USDA agencies as well as other federal agencies to coordinate issues and topics around urban agriculture. We manage a federal advisory committee, which advises the secretary, which houses subject matter experts, and they advise the secretary on issues related to urban agriculture and innovative production. We also manage the People's Garden initiative, and I bet there's some community gardens on the call. If you're not aware of that program, we probably won't get into it today, but go to usda.gov/urban to learn more. It's a great program where you can sign up to get a bunch of free technical resources. You get a nice sign and it says, you're part of the People's Garden Network. And many times there can be funding opportunities at the state level for People's Gardens involvement. So I definitely encourage everybody to check that out. Next slide. So going into the first part of our flagship grant programs, the one that deals with production-focused end of the food spectrum, we're looking at the Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production Grants. Next slide. So what these grants are essentially ways to build infrastructure around food production in urban areas, as well as other areas across the country. Don't let our name fool you, urban. USDA does not define that term. We do have a lot of projects in rural areas as well as suburban areas. So what urban agriculture and production grants do is provide access to food in areas where food is limited or unavailable. So thinking food deserts, also food swamps in areas where there is an abundance of maybe less healthy food. We're really trying to produce food where people need it the most, and reduce food insecurity as we fund these projects that are designed to work at the community level, not only to help provide fresh produce for community members, but also train community members in the agriculture sector and kind of, reinvigorating the agriculture sector as a vehicle for professional development as well. So proposals for the UAIP program must be designed to support multiple farmers and gardens. So it is not open just to individual producers. There has to be some sort of nonprofit component or community-based organization. And one of the great benefits of UAIP is that there is no match required. So in addition to being open to nonprofit organizations without any match, it's a very, it's a very heavily oversubscribed program. It's a popular program, but we're trying to break down those barriers to make it accessible to all types of organizations, no matter where you fall on the spectrum, if you're just starting out or if you need to expand operations. Next slide. So in terms of eligibility for UAIP grants, it's got to be a nonprofit organizations with or without 501c3. I think it's a typo on the slide. Status that also is 501, D and a whole host of other nonprofit organization statuses. A unit of local government, such as the county, the municipal level, township, etc. tribal governments, as well as state recognized tribal governments and tribal organizations, and then any school serving K through 12 elementary students, as well as independent school districts. And next slide. So here are some kind of examples of activities that can be done under UAIP. So initially we had these broken out into different types of projects, planning projects and implementation projects. Now we've kind of merged those. So there is no distinction between projects, but there are distinction between activities within projects. So we have planning activities, and you can see a list of them here, including surveys, assessment, technology development, creating business plans, feasibility studies, really trying to see, we have a lot of projects that are trying to focus on what is the layout of urban agriculture and the entire food system at large within our community. A lot of the times that knowledge baseline needs to be established, and we're trying to recognize that. Many projects and grant programs are focused on numbers and results. We know that these efforts, especially when it comes to urban agriculture, take time. And having a full stock of the inventory and information before you start implementation is always good. So if you think, oh, we don't have, we're not ready to do some big thing, that is perfectly fine. We want you to be ready to do that big thing. And so we do offer planning activities as part of our awards for UAIP. In terms of implementation, it really runs the gamut: job training and mentoring, business development assistance, obviously increasing food production. We want more urban agriculture operations out there. Education is a huge component. Obviously, bringing people that really don't have a lot of in the city, that don't have a lot of access to green space, bringing them in, showing the food system to them hands-on, and getting them out into a green space has a huge effect, especially among students, and really fosters that engagement with agriculture, as well as the production of compost. So there's many activities that can fit under a UAIP program, as long as it really is, focused on the food system and local food production. And next slide, thank you. So UAIP across the country, you can see kind of the swath of the map that we have filled out. We're very proud that we're filling out almost every state now. We still have to go through a few Pacific Northwest and the Plain states, but you can see in Northeast Ohio, there is a slew. Most of them are in Cleveland. So I know my friends in Akron would like to probably compete with them a little bit. So we would love to see more applications from Akron. I noticed that there is no slide in here about the funding levels and everything like that. The current funding opportunity for FY24 has closed. We do expect there to be a funding opportunity in FY25 for UAIP. And currently, I think the numbers are at up to $350,000 as the funding ceiling for the award, and then $50,000 as the funding floor. So enough to do a decent amount of damage and really give a shot in the arm to any urban agriculture programs that are happening. So again, happy to answer questions about UAIP as we move forward, but we'll move on to our composting and food waste reduction agreements, which are on the other end of the spectrum. So they are cooperative agreements, not grants. The difference of that is substantial involvement with the federal government. And that substantial involvement really boils down to us supporting you guys, the CFWR partners, in finding solutions to problems that they're encountering, liaising with other federal offices, and really gathering information from these projects so that we can get a good, kind of feel about what the state of composting and food waste reduction across the United States is today. So happy to go into that a bit more. Next slide. So our CFWR agreements are there to provide funding and to develop and test strategies for food waste reduction and composting. So what that usually looks like is municipal composting operations. Obviously, there is a concerted, compost is a big word now. There's a concerted effort to close that loop within the food system, and that's why CFWR is housed under our office. And really what I like to say is provide the first and maybe the last mile infrastructure for composting projects. So that could look like, a municipality that's just starting out. They want to put food scrap drop-off points available. Maybe they're partnering with a private hauler to take and compost the materials, and then maybe bring it to a community garden at the end. The projects can look very different. There's a lot of different ways to compost, and many unique situations that work for a locality but may not work in another locality. So we do do really want to encourage people to develop creative applications centered around municipal compost in terms of what strategies work for you, because it could also be developing a facility that really is a large facility with aerated static, compost pits, and being able to turn over a very quick production of yard waste, of food waste from maybe surrounding counties and municipalities as well. So there really is a big spectrum where those composting projects can fall. I'd also like to say that about roughly 25% of the projects we funded have nothing to do with compost at all. They are focused on food waste reduction. So that think edible food recovery, partnering with producers for gleaning operations, educating people about food preservation techniques and different best practices to avoid food waste, restaurant challenges to get the restaurant sector, engaged in reducing food waste themselves. We've had a lot of success with operations like that, and really just connecting, logistical networks. It could be food rescue organizations, food banks, charities, etc. And we do follow the EPA wasted food scale to some extent in our scoring. So there is, if your project is focused on, let's say, things that are higher in that scale, like source reduction, edible food recovery for human consumption, edible food recovery for animal consumption, basically staying in the human food cycle, we give you a few extra points because those are kind of what we see has more value. Composting is at one of the bottom. It's obviously better than putting it in a landfill, but we do want to upcycle those resources. And then anaerobic digestion is a little bit under composting, and then there's landfill. Just to give you a kind of the spectrum of where these projects can fall. Projects can be, again, in any type of community. We have projects that you have to take a plane to get to in Alaska. So again, don't let the urban name fool you. There is a 25% match requirement for this award as opposed to a UAIP. And that can be met with in-kind contributions, third-party contributions, as well as in-kind third-party contributions. So there are a number of ways to meet that that requirement. And lastly, just we found that a lot of the successful CFWR programs are successful because of their robust partnerships. We seeing prior in a private industry, different levels of local government, NGOs and community-based organizations, schools, et cetera, all working together on these projects. We see a lot more success, a lot more engagement, and a lot more community buy-in. So something to keep in mind. Next slide. CFWR applicant eligibility. Nonprofits are unfortunately not eligible, but they can partner with eligible entities on an application. So we do have a lot of folks that are with nonprofit organizations that draft essentially a proposal, review it with a primary applicant, and that primary applicant applies as the primary applicant. So that is mainly units of local government. Quasi-public institutions like regional planning councils, public housing authorities, landfill districts, things like that are also eligible. School districts, independent school districts are eligible. Tribal governments, as well as state recognized tribes and tribal organizations. And lastly, special district governments. So think soil and water conservation districts, landfill districts, planning districts, et cetera. And you can see some of the projects we have down here highlighting, Phoenix, Arizona, very school-based, trying to create a new waste stream for the school, which is very a common project. We have Kenai Peninsula Borough in Alaska that is using compost as chicken feed to give chickens kind of the first pass along it. They've partnered with some poultry farmers. And then there's one in Knoxville that is really centered on getting their residents engaged in composting, fostering compost as just a backyard practice for families to engage in if they have the ability, as well as some food drop-off points if they do not have the ability to compost in their backyard. Next slide. Priorities. These priorities are also something that CFWR takes very seriously. So show economic benefits to the community. That always strengthens the proposal. Make compost more accessible to agricultural producers. Include food waste reduction strategies, and incorporate strategic partnerships. So again, the more of the food system you can fit into your proposal, chances are the more successful that proposal can be. Next slide. So here's CFWR across the country. We're also very proud of the reach that CFWR has done, and we filled in this map quite a bit with our FY23 awards. This is actually not an updated slide. We've awarded 39 other projects, including in FY23 the city of Cleveland, who was our top scorer, actually, I believe, with their project, so a composting project. So definitely looking forward for good things in Cleveland, and definitely want more Akronites and people in the 13th district to take advantage of our opportunities too. And next slide. And this is a few resources just at the end here. I would definitely want to draw people's attention to the leftmost icon. That is our urban agriculture at a glance document, and it can be found on our website, usda.gov/urban. And you think maybe that QR code might be a little cut off, but I think it's still active if you can get to it. That essentially is what our office has compiled as a roadmap to USDA and all of USDA programs, of which there are a lot, that can be very difficult to navigate. But all USDA programs that have some sort of relevance to urban agriculturalists and urban producers. So we want it to be kind of just a one-stop guide. It has it very clearly listed out what the opportunities are, what they do, who's eligible for them, and at what point in your operation you might wish to engage with those programs. So it's a free resource. Definitely recommend checking that out, especially if you're just starting in the urban agriculture space, or if you've been in it for a long time but have not considered USDA as a partner in this space. There is a lot of opportunities out there for urban producers and community-based organizations that are involved in agriculture. So, very happy to have anybody reach out to me. I'll put hopefully I can put my follow-up with my email address. Happy to answer any questions. I do want to note that our CFWR opportunity is currently live on grants.gov. So I'll also provide those links to Richie, and maybe we can send that out in a follow-up email. That opportunity closes September 4th. We do expect there to be funding next year. So just in case you guys don't make it this year, we're hoping that, fingers crossed, that a farm bill comes in and funds the program. But yes, thank you very much. Very happy to answer any questions later on. And yeah, much appreciated for your attendance.
I'll jump in next. So again, good morning. Cheryl Rice here with Ohio Natural Resources Conservation Service. Again, just a little chunk of the USDA serving you here in Ohio. Go ahead, next slide. So the grant I want to talk to you about today that I want to share is our Conservation Innovation Grant. So NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, our whole goal is working for clean water, healthy soil, and really good production on agricultural lands here in Ohio. That's what we do here in Ohio. It's what we do nationwide. And these grants are really meant to take those conservation efforts that we work with anyone who's growing, and up the ante, help them improve, do something new, do something innovative. We've done everything in these innovation grants, from grazing work to urban production to large-scale production. Like Sean mentioned earlier, a lot of USDA that initially comes to mind is corn growing or big, fields of wheat. We've done projects at that scale, all the way over to something that's food production for individual restaurants that are done by either urban growers or food co-ops. So keep in mind that when we talk about production, we're talking about the wide array. A lot of what Sean said kind of resonated with us as well, that we're really looking at all scales of production and food across the country. So the purpose of conservation innovation grants is to stimulate the development and adoption of innovative conservation approaches. So what we're hoping to do is take what we already know, all the good conservation that we already do, and kind of keep it moving forward. So we have current practices and standards that we normally work with agricultural producers, but we're always looking to improve. And that's what CIG helps us do. It helps us kind of look at some of our current practices and maybe improve upon them, or come up with altogether new ones. And really, the cool thing about innovation grants is they're not really a research grant. I don't really want to try something super a brand new idea. I want something that somebody's been working on a while. They just need to take it from the scale of like maybe a greenhouse all the way up to a large scale full farm production pilot to do something to see if it's actually going to work. So that sort of, pretty good idea. We think it's going to work pretty well. We start there, and conservation innovation grants are really meant to accelerate that to get that information to the next level. Okay, go ahead, next slide. Oh, go back one. Yeah. So what I want to do as well, when we say innovation, I want to make sure we define that so you know what that means, because a lot of times folks have an idea in their mind on what that means. And when we fund these projects, I want to make sure you know what we're looking for is innovative. So something, of course, that's novel, something new, something we haven't seen before. That's one part of the definition. But another part would also be an under-adopted innovation. So maybe somewhere that this is well used, but not here in Ohio or not there in Northeast Ohio. Maybe they're using it somewhere else, but no one in this area has really taken it on and taken on that new idea and run with it. So maybe that's why we're going to do something in that area, because it's innovative here. It might also be that we're addressing a barrier. Is there a reason we can't do that new and innovative thing? Is there something that's in the way that we can try and work on that barrier and get it out of the way for agricultural producers? So hopefully CIG can do that as well for something that would be really valuable for those producers. Also, we are really looking at things that agri-industry is not currently addressing, meaning the industry itself right now hasn't really taken it on as something to sort of resolve. And we see this sometimes in different industries, right? Something they just kind of get used to doing things the way they do things, but it's not really good for everybody, and it can be improved upon, and the industry's not tackling it yet. So again, it might be a proof of concept. You have a good idea and we're going to try and prove it at scale, at a farm scale. Maybe you just need more data to be able to get folks to understand that it's a good thing to take on and do next. Go ahead, next slide. So conservation innovation grants, or CIG, we also call it that because in the government we have to put little letters on and pull those all together. So with CIG grants, we do two different versions of it. We do one here just at the state level, only for state Ohio projects. And then at the national level, the national office also does one that all the states, all the projects across the country compete for. And the reason we do that is we really find that different scale projects kind of need different touch, right? So if there is something just going on here in Ohio, we're able to do a grant right here in Ohio and focus on it. And then if it's a much larger scale idea and you need maybe some folks from Michigan or other states to kind of pitch in and get that done, well, you have an opportunity to do that as well with a national grant. So with the CIGs, we pick a target, a natural resource target of what we're looking for. So again, we talk about pushing ag forward, a new and novel idea forward. We want those to kind of fall in areas where we know there's a need here in Ohio. So urban agriculture is there on the list. And of course, climate smart agriculture, climate resilience. Those are two major priorities Ohio's had over the last 2 years, and it'll continue for the next couple, I'm sure. Water quality, I'm sure you're aware in Ohio, is a huge need. I did most of my first decade plus working with the agency up in Northwest Ohio, working on water quality issues with Lake Erie. So there's plenty we can do there. And the Ohio River has a lot of those very same issues, and we focus on those. Soil health, and we talked just a lot about composting, and it kind of made me think, oh gosh, that's a huge area we could be doing some work here in Ohio. So soil health would really tie back into that, as well as the urban agriculture piece. And then also another category we have pulled in as a focus for Ohio right now is sustainable forestry-based ecosystems. In other words, doing better with our forestry-based production. Go ahead for the next slide. So for these grants, again, for pushing conservation forward, what can we do better in urban agriculture? What can we do better for soil health? Who's eligible? Who can apply to do these kind of works? And basically, any non-federal agency, you need to be a non-federal based agency. It can be an individual. We can have individual operations or farms that have done these before, and we've actually done that up in close to the Northeast area. The Chef's Garden up there has had a CIG with us before. Also nonprofits, we've had community-based CDCs do work with us. Also institutes of higher education, extension, all those folks are all eligible. Farmer co-ops, all of those type of groups. A group of farmers that's working together as a collaborative. We've had those folks apply for CIGs in the past, as well as soil and water districts. Again, watershed groups, all those type of groups would all be eligible. The really exciting part about CIG is it's really a pretty big open door about who can apply. So that's what's exciting. I get to work with folks all the way from an individual producer all the way up to large scale organizations and municipalities. So go ahead to the next slide. So still talking about the state level grant, like I said, there's two tiers. We do one right here at the state level, and then they do one at the national level. So what are the difference between those two? Why would you want to apply for one versus another? The state one is a little bit smaller. Again, that we kind of pull money out of our state budget for that. And those projects fall between 300,000 and 50,000. So that's sort of the ceiling, the maximum minimum, the ceiling and the floor. And so if your project's going to fall somewhere in there, that's about the size the state grant tends to pay for. Above 300,000 to 2 million is what we're going to be doing for those national ones. So that's why it's slightly different scale that we're kind of targeting. In the state grant, we kind of designed to fit where the national grant kind of stepped away. So we do those state dedicated natural resource targets. So we pick them here at the state level of things we know that we need right here in the state of Ohio. And it does require a one-to-one match. Now, I do want to give you a caveat with that is we are allowed to for projects that serve historically underserved producers. And we are allowed to completely waive that or reduce that down to 25%, so much reduced. So don't feel like just because it says one-to-one, make sure you're taking a look at the grant announcement and take a good look at your project and see if that is something that you can take advantage of. Because we really are looking at, like Sean said, we're looking at reaching communities where there's a need. We're looking at investing in places where USDA historically has fallen short. Most of the projects, we really are kind of looking at them being somewhere between 1 to 3 years. Most of my CIGs are 3-year projects. Even if they propose them around 2 years, I kind of put in an extra year, give you a little bit of working time to get it done. All those applications go through grants.gov, sort of where Sean was talking his going through, and they're administered. Sort of the interaction that we have once you've received the grant is all through software, web-based software called EasyFed Grants. So if you've used that before, you know what it is. If not, there's all kinds of training resources out there, and I'm happy to help new applicants work through EasyFed Grants. Once you get the hang of it, it's just like any website. You kind of get the who's and what's it's of what it is. It works out just fine. But basically, at the state level, we're really trying to get those grants that are, the right size scale, like something that's just here in Ohio. Go ahead, next slide. The national ones, like I said, are a little bit larger scale projects. These can go across state lines. So maybe you have a partner that's working out of the Detroit area or a partner that's working out of Philadelphia, and you guys gonna want to both work on this grant. Well, the national level grants are probably a better fit for your project. Again, they start at 300,000 and can go up to 2 million, and they also require that one-to-one match. But again, that can also be waived for historically underserved or significantly reduced, typically be around 25%, like I said earlier. So don't feel like that has to be a big barrier to getting into it. Definitely take a look at the NFO. What's really exciting about this is National Headquarters picks those natural resource targets, and they kind of rotate through some major focus areas over a series of years. So 1 year, they'll have about 3 to 5 targets in any given year, and it might be pollinators, and it might be urban, and it might be climate smart. And then the next year it'll come around and it'll be forestry-based work or livestock-based work. And so you kind of have to look at it each year and see which target they're trying to get to, because they're trying to make sure they roll through everything, and they want to make sure they've got an opportunity to reach all those areas and fund what the needs are. So again, 1 to 3 year projects, still a true grant. And those actually go through a separate piece of software. There's a partners portal, which I kind of, I like that. I like how that one goes. It's similar to grants.gov, but it's a whole different location. So definitely look at those notice for funding to make sure you're starting in the right spot. And those projects are as well administered for that web-based software as well through that EasyFed Grants. So what's exciting about these ones is, again, is if you have a larger scale project and you're trying to pull in some pretty good regional or national partners, this part of the program is a really good fit for those larger projects. Go ahead, next slide. So what are the basics of the program? And I love talking through examples. What I should have done for this presentation, honestly, is just gone through a series of examples because I think it inspires people, all the good things that we've seen. And I think Sean's presentation was a good example of that. Like, here's what we're doing in Alaska. Here's what we're doing in Cleveland. Here's what we're doing everywhere else. So hopefully I can make some analogies to what you're seeing on the screen. So what can we pay for? What we pay for, what's really the easiest things to pay for inside our CIG grant is people time. So if you need money for people to do work on your project, CIG has a pretty good mechanism to do that. If you need supplies, seed or fuel for a tractor to get things up and moving, those type of things we do a really good job for. Those are all good things to pay for. The harder things that we have trouble paying for are things like purchasing brand new equipment. We can pay for the use of equipment, but actually buying the original equipment is oftentimes a need that an organization has, and the CIG doesn't do a great job in doing that. But again, for those 3 years, we can pay for the use of that for all the needs that you have in your project. So what's the crux of what we're trying to do, what we're asking you to do in these projects? Well, we're looking for you to demonstrate a new innovative conservation practice. Again, when cover crops were kind of making a really good comeback in agriculture, we did a lot of demonstration projects to show farmers, hey, why you would want to put cover crops back into rotation. We're looking for you to evaluate whether or not the practice, the thing you're kind of trying to try out, is it's actually really working. Are you getting the results you thought? Is it going to be as beneficial to the agricultural operation as you'd hope it would be? Is it affordable? Is it a great idea, but can people actually afford to do it in their production system? And then what is it helping in the natural resources? And is it helping clean water? Is helping soil health? Is it moving something along in technology so it's a little bit healthier to grow food? So we do ask that you have an evaluation component in there. If you're going to do a pilot and demonstrate something fabulous, how are you going to kind of evaluate it to see if it actually worked as well as you'd hoped it would? And then understand too that because we're looking at innovation, right, new ideas, I tell people all the time, we expect some of these projects to fail. We expect them sometimes to get started and put something out there and it not work exactly like the applicant or the grantee expected. And that's where innovation comes in. That's where we learn things, right? We try things, we fail, we retool and start again. So I actually don't mind when some of the projects don't exactly go as planned, because oftentimes we learn a lot more when we don't have initial success. It's really great if you can hit a home run the first time, but oftentimes we can learn a lot from not everything going as smoothly as we would have planned. We do hope as well that you want to share your good idea and your results. We're hoping that you would put in a technology transfer component. That's the term they use, but basically it's how are you going to share it? Other people that are excited about the kind of growing and things you're doing, how are they going to know about it? Are you going to do a field day and have them come over and see all the things that you're doing? Are you going to do a webinar like we're doing today? Are you going to have an opportunity to create some sort of educational document like at the end of Sean's presentation? Are you going to have a booklet or a resource or a series of websites that's got resources then for folks that would be excited and interested in your innovation? So we're looking for things like that in the grant. Go ahead, next slide. So what does it look like? Once you put a proposal together and you've given us your great idea, what do we do with it? So it's usually pretty simple. We do an opening typically annually each year. I normally post the state grant sometime in the winter, and then the national grant normally comes out sometime in the spring. This year's atypical. We have not yet got the national one out yet. It's supposed to be out sometime in the next couple months. So please keep your eyes open for that one. And the state one will probably be coming out in the fall into the early winter this year instead of into January, February, March. I'm going to hope to get that out super early. So keep your eyes open for those. So once those proposals come in, that goes to a panel. And depending on the topic area, depending on what you're proposing is who I put that panel together to do. So if your work has a whole bunch to do with, say, grazing, I will pull in a few grazing specialists to review your project proposal. And if yours was all about energy efficiency, or if your work is all about urban growing under high tunnels, I'll put a panel of experts together that does some work in that area. And we evaluate those proposals and we kind of rank them and give strengths and weaknesses. And then we give all that information to our state conservationist, the man in charge of NRCS here in Ohio, and he makes a decision based on our recommendations. Once those are selected, we take 2 or 3 months to get some paperwork done, and then your grant's ready to go and you're able to get started. It's actually pretty simple. The criteria is all going to be in that notice for funding. But basically what we talked about, or what I talked about in the last couple slides, is what we're looking for. What's your good idea? Who are you going to involve in it, and how are you going to share it with other people? What's the best way your evaluation is going to communicate those things about success or about what you need to do differently next time? Go ahead for the next slide. Oh, go back one more. So basics. Just so you know, whether you apply and you're successful or unsuccessful, you'll hear from me again. I run the program here in Ohio, so all of those will come through me. At the national level, they will also let you know what went well, again, strengths and weaknesses. And if you were selected, of course, you'll hear from us and we'll get started. We usually provide, at least here in Ohio, I provide a summary sheet that said, hey, here's all the stuff we liked. Here's all the stuff you might want to take a closer look at. And oftentimes I meet following on non-selection and go through all these comments with them so they can apply next time and do better and improve upon their project design. Again, expect those projects to begin just a few months after selection. And then once you get started, you're off to the races. Go ahead, next slide. Now, I didn't do the QR code thing. I feel like I was really out-teched with Sean with that one. I got to put those on this presentation next time. So grants.gov is where those are going to get posted. Hopefully that's pretty easy to come see. The CIG, or the Conservation Innovation Grants website, is actually fabulous. That little tab in there that's called Grantee Resources, I highly recommend that you go look at that. There's a whole guide. All the forms are there, a lot of explanation, and there's a couple really good videos that sort of explain what proposal looks like, what it looks like when you're selected, and what it looks like to work with NRCS for a couple, 2-3 years as your project moves forward. The SAM.gov is something that you're going to also need to take a look at. It's just sort of getting yourself a number and getting yourself an identity that goes back to the federal government. And just take a look at our definition of historically underserved, because again, those waivers for the match really go back to that, and that definition is really looking at veterans, beginning farmers, socially disadvantaged communities that have not been served by USDA well over the years. We really hope to engage those folks and bring them into the grants program and really get their projects up and running. So I think that's one more, maybe one more just has my email on it so people can get a hold of me. There it is. So there's my email and my phone number. I really would love to see a great project from Northeast Ohio. Again, we've done projects, everything from energy conservation with livestock feeders to cover crops, grazing projects. We've done high tunnels and urban ag projects. We've probably done maybe about a dozen of those. So I love working all across the state and getting to see all these new ideas people come up with. It's been super exciting. So please reach out and let me know what you're thinking. And I'll hand it back to you, Richie.
Okay, thank you so much for participating. Cheryl and Sean, you were excellent, of course. We appreciate you for sharing your expertise. As a lot of the folks on this call know, constituent services is the Congresswoman's #1 priority. And so making sure that our constituents are connected to the resources that they need and funding opportunities, like I said, is really a big issue for a lot of folks. And so thank you so much for sharing the information today and your willingness to answer questions for follow-up. I do have a few questions here, and just to let our participants know as well, if you do have any further questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. I am monitoring that, but I do have a few questions. Some of this might have already been answered, but if you could re-clarify and point us in the direction of the resources, we'd greatly appreciate it. So the first question is, how do the Conservation Innovation Grants support private landowners in implementing innovative conservation practices?
Yeah, so what we're really hoping to do with CIG is to take a group, a nonprofit, some organization's great idea and test it out So what we're hoping is anything that you have you want to do, and we want to get that at the farm scale to see if an actual producer can use your new idea and do it while making money, while running their operation. So CIG makes those investments to really take that risk away from that organization and those landowners. We take that risk on by funding the project for 3 or 4 years and getting it up and running and seeing if it's actually going to do the work that you hope it's going to do. And again, we hope that you have success, but oftentimes we learn a little bit along the way, and that technology kind of puts us in a better position. That data puts us in a better position to serve producers moving on into the future.
Thank you. And so these are in no certain order, so I apologize. The next question is, what are the specific grant opportunities available for urban farmers, and how can they apply for these grants?
Yeah, happy to take that. So, of course, most, if not all, and then I will defer to Cheryl, uh, um, NRCS opportunities are open to producers. There are very few programs that have a required land size or anything like that. But for the programs within our office, the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production, really that Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production Grant Program is going to be one of the best bets. Really is to catch almost all urban agriculture activities, as well as those activities that may not be, geared towards specific producers, but are more have a community focused aspect or serve multiple gardeners or farmers or producers. So that's what I would go with. It is a very popular program, so definitely always, and I think Cheryl will definitely back this up too. Get in touch with your local NRCS staff. They're more than happy to sit with you, talk with you if you go visit them in the office, and be able to go down what your options are in terms of what opportunities are out there that might fit your operation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll jump in with what NRCS is, if
Please.
that's helpful, Richie. So the conservation innovation grants are open to an individual producer. So again, if you have something going on in your operation and you have a new and innovative idea, you can apply to do a CIG individually. That's fine. I've had a few of those over even just the last 3 or 4 years, just new ideas. People are just running on their own. Our regular farm bill programs, our traditional farm bill programs, are also open to urban producers. The program that is used most efficiently and where we serve the most urban producers in the state of Ohio is our Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and you'll hear it get called EQIP all the time. But if you go, again, like Sean mentioned, just going out to your local NRCS office, so your Ag Service Center, so that usually houses Extension as well as Farm Service Agency, and then also the Soil and Water Conservation District. So if you know any of those offices, we're probably right across the hall, or if not in the same room. And that's the place that you want to start talking to us about whether or not that EQIP program works well for you. But it's what we do with EQIP oftentimes serves our urban farmers the most directly. We have a chance to serve them with using high tunnel technology, cover crops, pollinator habitat, also improvements to irrigation oftentimes. Those are probably the ones in Ohio that we're using the most with our urban growers.
Thank you so much for sharing. Our next question says, what are the eligibility requirements for organizations to participate in the People's Garden Initiative, and what benefits do they receive?
Very, very happy that question was asked. So the eligibility requirements are essentially public access. So it is the people's garden. So we definitely want people to be able to access the site. Basically that's there to prevent individual gardens from, signing up to be part of the network. The benefits are multiple and very technical oriented now. So we do have quarterly webinars that really just provide, updates on what's going on with USDA in terms of support to community gardens, but also a bunch of technical expertise just in terms of training. We invite subject matter experts from across USDA that really give not just the typical, tips and tricks that you might find online, but really kind of the cutting edge research and kind of best practices that USDA has seen for gardens in all areas. You also get just inducted into that network. So we do have a subgroups that are on Extension Foundation's Connect platform. And one of them that has really taken off in terms of the People's Garden, of just these, different gardens in different areas, grouping themselves kind of in as sub-regional entities. So we do have a lot of like kind of a focus group on, gardening in the Southwest, for instance, that are dealing with a lot of the same, aridity and drought problems and things like that, so that these organizations can come together, share the common problems they have, and hopefully work towards common solutions. So that's one of the benefit. There was, now I will not put my foot in my mouth here and talk about funding when there is not funding, because that is always anathema to everybody. But there was, within, I believe, ARPA, or one of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, funding that was made available to People's Gardens, disseminated through the state level in some certain states. So that is very, tangential. But you are, by joining this network, it doesn't make you eligible for funding or anything, but you are registered as a People's Garden entity, and you're within the network of clientele with the People's Garden. So your local and state FSA, NRCS office, you're on their map essentially a bit more, and you're also on our map with the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production. So we've got a lot of different treats that kind of come through the pipeline in terms of technical assistance, some financial assistance, but definitely encourage anybody who is a publicly open community garden, or even a garden that's on a publicly available space that does education demonstrations and things like that. Definitely check it out. Again, usda.gov/urban, and you can find out more.
Thank you so much. So we have one final question, and it is, how does the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production coordinate with other federal agencies to amplify opportunities for urban and innovative producers?
Also a great question. And we've, being kind of the new office in this space, we have kind of taken it upon ourselves to collect all these very loose threads that are happening around urban agriculture in the federal government, and bring them together. So I'd say the number one coordinating thing that we have is, in terms of, if there is a special topic that happens, we're part of almost every working group. We want to offer our partners within our two flagship programs as case studies for different areas in the federal government where they're looking to see, urban agriculture in action, composting and food waste reduction in action, to give, federal regulators as well as local, people in all throughout the sector, an idea of what's going on in each individual area for urban agriculture and composting and food waste reduction. So a lot of times we take that data, and especially that anecdotal evidence that we're gathering, and we provide it to federal partners to give them an idea. I think our number one and number two partnerships are both with EPA offices. So we work very closely with the EPA Office of Brownfields and Revitalization. That's a very big topic in urban agriculture, especially in areas where, community gardeners are just kind of finding a plot, and there's a lot of guesswork in terms of, okay, is this safe to grow here? Do I have to do any remediation? And there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to that, especially if you're opening up for children to come grow, and you want to know that everything's safe. So we've worked with EPA on helping to develop some best practices. There is a really great guide on EPA's website. If you go to, I think, just Google EPA brownfields, and you'll see their resources there, called What to Know Before You Grow. And that has been pretty indispensable to a lot of people in terms of just giving them a roadmap for what to do. If, okay, I have a plot in an urban area, what do I do with it? We also work very close with EPA's Sustainable Management of Food section, and they are, the kind of composting gurus and food waste reduction specialists within EPA that are kind of looking at the whole of the composting industry, not just community-based or local-based efforts, but seeing what's kind of going on at the macro scale. What are some of the industry challenges that are happening, and how we can kind of facilitate more compost production happening and more alternative waste streams in more communities. We also in USDA have a section devoted to food loss and waste. So within the Office of the Chief Economist, we have our food loss and waste group that's really, has their hand in a lot of different areas with food waste reduction challenges and working with organizations across the country that are trying to find these solutions, whether they're novel, like, creating an app that can actually link gardeners with drop-off sites or things like that, where they can provide their produce to people that need it, or just very standardized things in terms of providing recommendations for the secretary in terms of what we have seen in composting operations around the country, what problems they're experiencing, what solutions that there might be. So we kind of, again, feed a lot of that information that we're gathering from our offices up to different actors that are actually kind of focused on developing these policies that have a really big impact across the country.
Thank you very much, Sean, and thank you so much, Cheryl, as well. I am not seeing any further questions. However, folks, if you do have questions, everybody's contact information is in this presentation. Please feel free to reach out to folks. This will also be posted on our website, and we will be sharing the slides with participants as well. Again, Sean and Cheryl, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us and spending your morning with us. I think one of the coolest things for me about this job is, getting this exposure to other federal agencies and really getting, an expertise and delivering this information to our constituents in a way that we can't always do it. We don't have that same expertise. So your partnership and participation is very much appreciated. And I'm sure that our constituents greatly appreciate it as well. So I will go ahead and close us out. Sean and Cheryl, is there anything else that you would like to add or say before we close out?
No, just thanks for the opportunity to chat. And again, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Happy to go through a project idea with you.
Same exact thing. Happy to offer any support that we can. CFWR's notice of funding opportunity is currently live. So we're limited to what we can say, but we're happy to point to where in the NOFO you can find the information that you need. But thanks again very much. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, again, as a Northeast Ohio local, I'm really hoping that we see more applications from Northeast Ohio. So thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you both. And to everyone still on the call, please have a great weekend.